I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is my podcast.
I can do the job, but running the business is quite difficult. What a lot of tradesmen lack, and I was probably one of them, is business skills.
I don't mind making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes.
Information is all around you in the minds of people that work beside you.
Welcome back to the Trench Talk podcast. I'm your host, Matt Reynolds, and today I spoke with Brigham Dickinson, who is the president at Power Selling Pros, a customer service coaching business for the home services industry, which includes trades such as plumbing and electrical, amongst many others, based out of Utah in the United States. His clients also include the likes of Mitsubishi Electric, Lennox, the Dwyer Group, Carrier, American Standard, and the Electric and Gas Industries Association University. This conversation revolved around many of the teachings and lessons Brigham explores in his new book titled Patterned After Excellence, Pursuing Truth in Work and Life, which is now available for purchase on Amazon. The idea of these discussions, for those of you joining us for the first time, is to go into the trenches of achievement and talk not with people who are orchestrating from some lofty perspective, but to those high performers who are actually in the trenches honing their craft. That has included guests from the worlds of business, sport, and entertainment, all of whom are on the front lines doing amazing things. In addition to his role of president at Power Selling Pros, Brigham is also the founder of the Power Certification Program, a call handling training program that holds teams accountable to booking calls and creating wow experiences over the phone. Brigham started Power Selling Pros in 2009 when he saw that call handlers needed assistance consistently converting calls to bookings. As a result, Brigham answered the need and created the Power Certification Program to effect change in the industry's call centres in the United States, Canada, and here in Australia. The purpose of the Power Certification Program is to partner with contractors and to certify their customer service representatives to deliver world-class customer experiences. The program guarantees that contractor call handling teams book at least 85% of their calls and wow more customers. During this chat, we covered a lot, including why fast-growing trade companies are training their competitors, technology and human skills, why it's so important your clients like you and how to do that, managing millennials, leadership, finding truth, communication, growing businesses, and as always, much more. You can learn more about Brigham at powersellingpros.com, and you'll find his new book, as I mentioned, on Amazon. Just search Brigham Dickinson in the Amazon search bar and the new book will pop right up. If you enjoy Trench Talk, head to xrm.com.au/podcast and opt in for the newsletter. We'll make sure you're notified when every new episode of the show is released. Trench Talk is available everywhere good podcasts are served, so if you're feeling super nice, please leave a review, comment, rating, or whatever your chosen podcast platform allows. Enjoy this chat with Brigham Dickinson. Brigham, thanks for doing this.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now, I am in my home office today in Melbourne, Australia. We're recording this over Zoom. It's a sunny September morning. Whereabouts in the world are you sitting and coming to us from?
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's a suburb called South Jordan, just next to Salt Lake City. Most people know Salt Lake City because of the Olympics, and so I just reference it as that.
And that's your home base?
Yeah, it's my home base. This is where I live.
Perfect. Now, I wanted to start with a bit of a look at the future of the trade space, because you work with a lot of businesses and not just businesses, but really businesses, I suppose, at the forefront of the industry and ones that are growing quickly. So what do you see for the home services, plumbing trade space in maybe the next 5 to 10 years? Because there's a lot going on here at the moment, isn't there? There's companies like yours that are really helping to train and develop us as industry participants more professionally. We've got digital disruption. I know you've got a technology product that you use as well. So where do you see the industry as a whole going in that next 5 to 10 year period?
Matt, that is a loaded question. Let me start with the difference between those companies. And as a side note, we work with hundreds of companies. We started in this industry training CSRs, people who answer the phones, call handlers. And we teach them a set of principles, and we take them through a certification program that we call Power Certification. There are 830 call handlers in that training as we speak, and it takes about a year and a half to complete. It's a bit of a university for them. About 2 years ago, we had a several of our existing clients ask us to teach the same principles that we teach to call handlers to their technicians. So there's about 5 technicians for every 1 call handler with the companies that we work with. And so we started teaching technicians as well. And then most recently, we've been working with business owners as well, seeing the same principles we teach, the same truths we teach apply to them, in addition to the technicians and the CSRs. And here's the 2 types of companies that I'm seeing. When it comes to those who address the shortage of help, the shortage of technicians, I'm sure you've heard that several times, you've talked about it several times. But those who are proactively starting schools for those who do not have experience in the industry tend to be the ones that stand out. I'll give you one example. There's a company I work with called AC by J in Phoenix, Arizona. This company is dynamic and they're forward thinking. They not only train their own technicians, people that do not have any experience in the industry, to become technicians, they also train their competitors' technicians. And the objective is to build the industry up as a whole. And so you have individuals that have been hired by companies all over the city of Phoenix in Arizona. They're coming into one room and learning how to be technicians with this one company. And it's pretty remarkable what they're doing and how they're forward thinking and they have this abundance mentality. So as far as industry trends are concerned, yeah, we have a shortage of technicians. And you can complain about that. You can cry about that. You could wish it were different. Or you can be a part of the solution. And that's what AC by J is doing. So that's some of the things that I'm seeing there. As far as digitally, let me just unwrap that real quick. There's a lot. People want to be understood. And when I say people, I'm referring to homeowners or the customer in general, whether it's a small business or whoever your end user is. They want to be understood, but they also want to communicate the way they want to be communicated to. So whether that's via email, whether that's via chat, you've got to be able to provide that method. So yes, we have a product called Power Chats. You can go to powerchats.com and check it out and get a free demo. But basically, you send, say, for example, through pay-per-click or through SEO, you send people to your site. You get people to your website. Well, the issue with that is that once the homeowner gets to the website, where do they go from there? How do you capture that opportunity? The people who manage your pay-per-click or your SEO could say, hey, look how many people have viewed your site. Well, that's great. How many of those viewers became customers of yours? How many of them reached out to you, had an appointment with you, so on and so forth? How do you get a return on that investment? How do you capture it? And that's what Power Chats or what chat is for. It's a link that you put on the website. And it's AI that responds. You see, there's a lot of companies out there that provide live chat. Well, the problem with live chat is that it's live. What that means is you have to have a human being who answers that chat. What if they're occupied? What if they're not there because the chat is at 3:00 in the morning? Any number of what ifs, right? Your average live chat, the response rate in general is slow. It could be anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depending on how much time it takes that human to get back to it, which is why with Power Chats, we use AI. We use a robot, and that robot immediately responds, and the conversion rate for the robot is about 90%, whereas with live chat, it's about 30%. So that's one way, but let's take it a step further. We have a goal, say, for example, with service agreements, to get the customer to keep coming back and buying from us. Sure, we may fix their system and make a few $100, but the real meat is when they replace something big in their home. And of course, we're doing everything we can to nurture the relationship over time so that when it is time to do the big purchase, that they do it through us as opposed to through somebody else. But if you're not constantly in contact with them, you cannot guarantee that they'll come back and buy from you. You might think that you have 10,000 customers in your customer base, but guess what? They may not all be your customers. They were your customer at one time, but what are you doing to keep them? And we find that those, on average, what is it? It's $200 for the first time purchase, $500 for the second time purchase, and then It goes on up for when they come back a third time, that it's more of a $900 purchase on average. And I get those stats from Fresh Lime. Fresh Lime is a really cool digital marketing organization that targets your existing customers and digitally advertises to them in many different ways via the internet to keep your company top of mind, and so that when they're ready to buy, they always come to you and nobody else. So digitally, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing organizations like Fresh Lime and like Power Chats, our product, taking over because the homeowner wants to communicate the way they want to communicate. And it's important that the business owner recognizes how the homeowner wants to communicate and respond to it in the way they want to and the way they want it done. So that's what I'm seeing digitally. Now, so those companies that are forward thinking, those companies that are growing and taking it to the next level, recognize that they cannot do it on their own. There are stats out there about employees, especially in the age group of 23 to 38. I hesitate to use the name millennial because it's the first time we've ever used a generation as a scolding word. I mean, nobody says, oh, those Gen Xers or those baby boomers. You know, everybody has a tendency to say, oh, the millennials. Well, what's interesting about millennials is if you can lead them, you will find that they are the most loyal generation I've ever dealt with. I have 35 employees, and many of them are in that age group, 23 to 38. And if you take care of them, if you paint the picture for them, if you give them a cause that's bigger than any one individual, something that's bigger than them, that they can get behind, I'm telling you, you will not find a more loyal, a more committed, a more creative group of individuals. However, that also means there's the other side of that coin is this. Misery is also up. And what I mean by misery is that 30% of millennials in that age group, 23 to 38, are sadder than other generations, more sad. They are more depressed. Many of them feel lonely. In fact, 25% of millennials say that they feel lonely. 20%, in fact, it's 22 to be exact, feel that they don't have, I quote, best friend. And sometimes at work, they cover it up by saying, man, I'm just tired. If you ever have an employee that says, gosh, I'm just tired, the alarm bell should be going off in your head. They are likely depressed and unhappy for various reasons. And if they are that way, it's up to you as the leader to help change that behavior, to create a culture of happiness. So what is it that creates happiness? Well, it's relationships. It's the ability to build meaningful relationships. Now, why isn't that generation happy? Well, you could say that in this touchscreen age, social skills have eroded or maybe even never been developed. And they don't know how to build those relationships, the very thing that will help them become happy. Now, here's the benefit of being able to build great relationships. The benefit is that it's the backbone of progress. It's the backbone of prosperity. You need to have relationships. Matt, let me just give you one example of what I mean. I went into a dermatologist and got this, crazy, weird bump taken out of my head. Now I'm back here going, wow, that's kind of graphic, and it may be, but let me just get to my point. The guy is older, right? I had to work with the lady over the phone to even fit me in. The guy was booked up for weeks. So I figured, okay, this guy has to be good, right? I go in, he's older. He cuts my head open without gloves. While we're there, he has no problem bringing up religion and politics, two major no-nos, and sews me back up. I have to go back in 2 hours later because he ended up cutting some blood vessels or something, and blood accumulated it underneath the stitches, and I had to go get it drained and re-sewed up. It was terrible and awful. It was tough. It was rough, but I never complained once. I had every right to complain. Had every reason to complain. The guy didn't wear gloves. He talked about politics, religion, and all the offensive stuff, and yet I wasn't offended. Why? Well, the answer is because I liked him. He was an extremely likable guy. And when you like people, they become more amiable. The customer does. I was more amiable. I was more flexible. I was easier to deal with because I liked him. And that's the power of relationships. And that's the backbone of progress and prosperity. So the point that I'm trying to make is that in today's world, with 75% of the workplace consisting of millennials, the industry is screaming for leadership. It is screaming for a purpose, for a cause. And it's incumbent upon us leaders to be better at being just that. Leaders. Lead them.
So this is a challenge that we certainly face here in Australia, and I've had many conversations around the millennial generation and leadership and how to communicate with them. So it almost seems to me like there's kind of a left and a right and a middle, if you like. And what I mean by the middle is kind of the old way of communicating and doing things, where everyone sort of chugs along fairly well okay. And then we've got this, as the digital and technology infusion has come into what we do, that can isolate a lot of people, which means that the human skills on the other side actually become more important. So we're working at two extremes now, and it seems to be the high-tech, high-touch kind of approach that is cutting through, and not all cases, but many, helping people feel more connected, but it actually creates a more efficient and effective environment and something that people want to be part of. Now, that's my take on it. Are you seeing that from all the work that you do? Am I on the right track with that thought?
Yes. So you definitely want to find a way to fuse together technology and human relations. So I think that kind of sums up what we're both trying to say is that they're both there, and you need both in order to continue to grow and have progress in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've got a book that you've released just in the last few days, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time unpacking that, because I suspect, and I haven't asked you this, that the book is titled, first of all, Patterned After Excellence, Pursuing Truth in Work and Life. And I have a feeling that the idea for this book may have come out of the situation that I guess the industry and world is in right now, and that we just touched on. So is that correct, first of all? And can we talk about the moment and the first ideas you had and why this came to be?
Yeah. So I've been working on this book for about 3 years, and there's a lot of events that occurred. The two that come to the top of my mind is, number one, sitting down with Stephen Dale, who is my director of training, and Barry Yates, who's my director of sales, and who's been with me since the beginning when we started this company. I think my first day he started, he didn't take the $50,000 a year job so that he could work for me for $1,000 a month. And of course, the rest is history. We'll probably do $3 million this year. So I'm grateful for Barry. But Stephen Dale and I were talking, and we were talking about how the industry isn't focused on the right things. They're focused on making money. They're focused on booking the call. They're focused on closing the sale. Are these important things? Sure, absolutely. They're vital. But it's like gas that you put in a car. The question is where's the car going? And as a business owner, you might make money. You might do really well. But those who work for you likely aren't going to do as well as you. So you need to motivate them with something other than money. And here's what's interesting, that with the age group, 75% of our workforce isn't necessarily motivated by just money anyway. They're motivated by purpose, by a cause. What is your cause other than money? And above and beyond that, why do people buy from you? And did they have a good experience? And would they come back and buy from you more often? See, if you can answer these questions, well, then the money will come. Why? Because you're focused on people instead of the money. And so one of the things that inspired this book was the conversation, the conclusion that Stephen and Barry and I came to, which is that we need to refocus. We need to focus on purpose as opposed to the money. The second thing that occurred was the result of self-reflection. My organization plateaued at about 300 trainees several years ago. And it was frustrating because, and I'm sure I'm the only one on this podcast, right? Or who will listen to this podcast that's ever plateaued or hit a brick wall in their business.
Yeah, no, that's certainly a very rare thing you've come across there.
So I hit it, and I hit it 2 or 3 years in a row. And finally, I hired a coach because I was at my wit's end. I was depressed. I didn't know what to do, and I was constantly focused on sales and closing more appointments and all the numbers, and the numbers just weren't making sense. And after a meeting, this coach that I had hired said, you do a really good job of teaching the principles you teach, but I'm not sure you follow them.
Oh, wow.
And that was a painful experience for me. And I kind of lost my way.
As a result of that comment?
Yeah.
Or feedback?
Well, no, before I realized that I had lost my way. And so it was him bringing me to the attention of that fact. And I began to sit down and write. So I guess you could say that this book is for the imperfect, but still striving. And of course, I'm referring to me. So I wrote it for me, to remind me what I'm really all about. And what's interesting is that during the time that I've been writing this book, my company's grown leaps and bounds from 300 trainees to 830 now. And we do a whole lot more trainings than we've done before. We've done over 100 trainings this year alone. And we've never done that before either. So it came down to focusing on people. And so I started teaching people what I needed to learn. And that's what this book is about. Or at least that's how it came to be.
So this was almost like, this is the human element that's been put on top of the core business that you already had, because it's quite a sizable business. And this is your second book, of course. And the first book is titled Patent for Excellence. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Which is engaging your team and creating this wow experience. So this is like, your first book is, if I'm summarizing this, is all about driving the business. And this second book, this new book, is about really finding your truth and being the best person that you can be in accordance with your values. Have I summarized that in a fair way?
Yes. And I would just add one thing, as opposed to it being your truth. And we have a tendency to say that. In fact, we talked about this before the podcast started. Just for the rest of the audience, let me bring them up to speed. A lot of people say, or they reference truth as their truth. And this is a common misconception today that is used, and because everybody has what they call their truth. But what they're really saying is they have their belief. Now, when your belief flies in the face of what is universally true, in other words, what's true for you and what's true for me, you'll find that the consequence will get in the way of your truth and might provide a rude awakening. Now, let me give you one example. Let's say I believed, and I called it my truth, that if I were to plant an apple seed, that I would nurture it and take care of it, water it, give it plenty of sun, that it would provide me peaches. Now, that's my truth. Well, you're going to find that no matter how you take care of it, it's still going to render you apples and not peaches. And that is a natural law. It is a natural truth. Now, we may use truth by many words, or we might describe truth with many words. Stephen R. Covey calls it principles. There are others that say values, company core values. There are others that may use virtues. George Washington, the first president of the United States, often used the word virtues, and the connection between virtues, following those virtues, and happiness when applied. And so I just simply call them truths. Universal truths. They are natural laws that govern action and belief. They've been around long before you were born, and they'll be around long after you're gone. They just are. And even though we cannot create or own truth, we can discover truth. We can apply truth. And as we do, as we discover and apply truths, that is the key to happiness. That's how we experience the most freedom ever created.
So how do we go about discovering the true essence of truth? And I'm unsure of the way that you structured this book, but is this the process that you take your readers through?
Yes. Yeah. So the very first thing I do is we unpack what truth is, what universal truth is. And then we unpack what agency is. Agency is your choice to choose. Every human on the earth has the ability, has the right to choose. If nothing else, they get the right to choose their own response. Independent of circumstance, independent of events as they occur, they still get to choose their response. In addition to that, there are human tendencies that keep us from truth. Let me just give you one example. Positive attitude. How many times have you heard that you should be positive? How many books talk about positive attitude? There's so many books on behavior. It's crazy. But what's interesting is as much as we know about good behavior, how often do we apply that good behavior? Not very often. Now, why is that? Because a study of behavior to change behavior doesn't work. However, a study of truth and recognizing the why behind it is incredibly powerful to change behavior. And so we focus on truth, and then we focus on the human tendency. Even though we know we should be positive, events occur, circumstances happen, right? And we choose in those situations to not be so positive. That's a human tendency. Now, when we're negative, it affects everybody around us, does it not?
It certainly does. No, we all know those people that can drain us more than they charge us. That's for sure.
You got it. So that's the human tendency. Stuff happens, we get negative, we affect everybody around us. If we stay positive, guess what? That also affects everybody around us. It's funny how we get to thinking that the decisions we make only affect us. That is a human tendency. That is a lie. It's a lie that we tell ourselves. Every decision we make affects everyone around us. And for example, when we become indifferent, okay, let me just give you an example. My son wrestles. He's getting to be a really great wrestler. He's 13 now. Started when he was very young. I don't know, I'd say 8. But he's getting good. Last year, he was tired one day. And I pay for wrestling practice. So guess what? My son's going to go to wrestling practice because I pay for it, right?
Yes.
Well, he was tired this day. And I had a date planned with my wife. I didn't have time for him to be tired. And so I said, son, get up. Get your wrestling clothes on. You are going to wrestling practice. It may sound familiar. I'm sure the people listening, the audience listening, can relate to this. Those with kids anyway.
Well, and those that have been kids at some point, right? I think we've all heard and given those given those instructions before. But yes, go on.
So I get him into the car, right, and drive to practice, and but not a word. He didn't say a word the whole time. But hey, I'm on a time crunch. I've got to get back to the house and go on this date with my wife, right? My other kids needed their babysitter as well. So the babysitter was going to be there. There's all kinds of things going on. I was on a time limit. I need to go. So I get him to the wrestling practice, and he stands at the door of the wrestling practice. And I said, okay, go ahead and go in. And he looks at me and he says, I don't want to go. So what do? I use the less effective way. I grab him by the arm and I push him in. I said, yes, you are. I turn around, I start walking away. About a few meters of my walk, I felt this shadow behind me. I turn around, guess who it is? It's my son, Isaac. He's not going. Even now more determined than he was before. So I realized that my force wasn't getting me anywhere, right? And my indifference wasn't getting me anywhere. When I say indifference, I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about me. I wasn't concerned about his needs. I was concerned about my own needs. And I realized I needed to fix this. So I got down on one knee, eyeball to eyeball, and I said, Isaac, why don't you want to go to wrestling? I'm tired. Okay, buddy. Why are you tired? Well, I played video games late last night and I didn't get enough sleep and I'm tired. son, I recognize that you're tired. And I'm sorry that you're tired, buddy. And I know that you don't want to wrestle today. But here's the thing. I know that you want to compete on Saturday. Now, you're 3 days away from your competition. Sometimes you've got to wrestle tired in order to compete. Now, why is that? Well, because I'm not going to let you compete on Saturday if you do not practice today, because I don't think you're going to be ready. No, Dad, I'll be ready. I promise I'll be ready. Yes, I know you'll be ready if you practice. But here's the thing. I'm not going to let you compete on Saturday if you do not practice today. So if you want, I can bring you home. I can take you home. You can get some rest. You can rest up, but no competition on Saturday. The choice is yours. Which would you prefer? What's it going to be? I'll never forget it. He takes a moment and he processes everything. And he looks at the ground as he's processing. He puts his hands up by his ears. He doesn't touch his ears. He just puts them up there. He's just thinking, he's processing all of this. And he goes, okay, I'll go to practice tired. And I said, look, buddy, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying that when we make commitments, we need to keep them. I'm trying to teach you this now so that later on in life, when you make commitments, you recognize that you keep them. And if you don't, there's consequences for that. Not that anybody's trying to be mean. It's just that there are natural consequences that occur. You make a promise, you keep it. You make a commitment, you do what you got to do to keep it. That's what I'm trying to teach you, buddy. That's all. He understood. He went in willingly to practice. His coach gave him a partner and we were off. We were off to the races. As I drove home, I realized the difference. You see, the human tendency is that we care about ourselves and we take and we take and we take, as opposed to being givers. We want to give our attention first. Give our attention first. Now, what's funny is I taught this to co-handlers in the beginning of my business. And at the time, I didn't realize that there was an application much bigger than, hey, before you take information, in other words, before you get a name, address, a phone number, give them your attention. Show them you're listening. Show them you care. Reassure them they've called the right place. You see, they have these emotional needs, and you need to take care of those first in order to build a relationship with them, in order to get them to book with you and nobody else. See, that's what I taught in the beginning. But now I see a much bigger meaning as my company has grown and progressed.
So on the bigger scale, giving your attention might mean a conversation at the, getting down on the same level as your son. On a practical day-to-day basis, how do you do that over the phone with a customer that calls for or inquires with your business?
So a customer gets on the phone, and let's say the first thing they ask is what do you charge for X? Because that never happens, does it?
No, people that chase the price. That would be the first as well.
So they get on the phone. What do you charge for that? It's a great question. It really depends on your situation. Can you tell me more about it? Well, yeah, here's my situation. Wow. How long you been dealing with that? Oh, last couple of days. Oh my gosh, that's not good. Well, look, we can help you with that. When would you like us to come out? Oh, this afternoon would be good. Well, what just happened there? Well, the thing is, the customer has an emotional need. Emotional needs, by definition, do not have logic attached to them. Okay, I learned that early on in my marriage, that you cannot apply logic to emotion. It's emotion. It's not supposed to make sense.
When you try to, it can get you in trouble, right?
Yeah. Oh, what do you do? But our goal here is to recognize the emotional need. People have emotional needs. They need to be understood. They need to be cared for. They need to be reassured that they've called the right place. And so your goal is to take care of those emotional needs. And when you do, just like that dermatologist that broke all the rules, was able to create a connection with me because he was able to take care of the emotional side. He was so good at it, so good, that nothing he said or did really mattered that much. So that's the objective over the phone. Now, you can take that as a business leader, do the same thing. You have an employee that comes in tired. They say they're tired. Okay, alarm bells. Jump on that. Address that. Get on the same level. Show them that you care. Show them that you understand. Reassure them that they're in the right place at the right time. Remind them of the purpose, of the cause that's bigger than any one individual. And just like my son, you'll get them to perform at a high level at work.
That makes perfect sense, and I 100% agree with what you're saying on a one-on-one basis. But if you have a larger company where there's maybe levels of management and also leadership, how do you ensure that that filters down? Is it making sure that the levels below you have the same conversations?
Excellent question. First thing I want to say is that success leaves clues. Let me use Apple. Steve Jobs. Everybody knows Steve Jobs, yes?
Sure do.
Okay. He was fired from Apple. Everybody knows that story. Goes and buys Pixar. You know, Pixar.
A small little operation?
Yeah, just a little. And he sells that to Disney. And crazy thing, Apple wants him back. Well, go figure. They were about 90 days away from bankruptcy. And he comes back on, and the first thing he does is he gets everybody together and he says, look, we need to understand what we're all about. Now, there's a lot of companies out there that'll build a box. Sound familiar? We also, in our industry, build and sell a box.
True.
But Steve Jobs said, but that's not what we're about. What we're about is we're helping those individuals who think they can change the world. Because it's those individuals who think they can change the world who actually do. And that's what we're about. So he was able to paint the picture for everyone. That's what great leaders do. Now, has it been duplicated? Yes. If you were to Google Zappos, if you were to Google Southwest Airlines, if you were to Google Chick-fil-A, you would see that it's happening over and over again. And what are they doing? They create purpose for their organization. They set core values up, truths, natural laws that apply to everyone. You can't change them. You can only discover them. Now, the benefit of building these core values is that you make it easy for them. You don't discover anything. They're there, right there. And then you apply them. You use them in all your hiring, training, and even firing processes. That's the recipe. And it works. It's been used over and over again. You're not creating anything. You're just following the clues that have already been from companies that have already done it. Core values, purpose, mission. It's just a matter of having the discipline to do it.
And the companies that you're working with and you're seeing this being successful, I mean, working with directly here, how often are they communicating their values? Is it a weekly meeting? Is it via phone call? How is it actually playing out on a really practical day-to-day in the trenches basis?
Yeah, I'll tell you how I do it. Because you can read in their various books how they do it. But the way, and when I say they, I'm referring to Zappos and Apple and Chick-fil-A and so on and so forth. There's plenty of books out there that you can get, but I will explain how we do it. We have a set of core values. They are 8. They happen to be the very 8 principles we teach to call handlers, technicians, and owners. We follow the same principles. We teach people to do what we are doing. In our Monday morning meetings, we go over each of those core values. And then we have breakthroughs where we highlight the core values we used in those breakthroughs or that were followed in those breakthroughs. And then we also do a set of shout outs where we shout out another employee for how they followed each of the core values or the principles. And it may be 1 or 2, certainly not all of them per se, but we're able to push one or the other or highlight one or the other based on what occurred. And we're constantly referring back to them in all of our interviewing processes, as well as our reviewing processes. When we sit down and we do a review, whether it be a 6-month review or a 1-year review, when we're talking about raises, the core values come into play. And when an employee needs to be reprimanded, we reference the core values over and over again and explain what we're looking for, the objective we're looking to achieve. So yes, in your meetings, make it a priority in every one. And I would say that shout outs and breakthroughs should be something you do in each of your meetings as well to keep the core values top of mind and building that culture, because it really is up to the leader to build cultures that change behavior, In other words, help them follow truths as opposed to human tendencies that produces progress and prosperity.
It's a little counterintuitive in some ways, particularly as a small business operator, right? That the more time it seems that you spend on this, the faster your business will grow. Whereas when you are small, the faster you can make your hands move, the better you tend to do, right? So I guess there's a point where you switch over, but it's something to really keep in mind because it's definitely tied to those businesses that take off. I mean, businesses don't tend to take off, if you look at it the other way, without these things in place, which is maybe another way of looking at it, right?
Yeah.
And last, I should add.
Here's what's interesting. For any business to grow, the business owner needs people. They need followers. The best leaders have the most followers, and they get their best work out of those followers. And so when we focus on anything other than people, whether it be the end user, the homeowner, or our own people, we immediately become self-centered, get off track. And that's what causes plateaus, in my opinion, more than anything. More than any outside force, I would say that we are the enemy. We are the ones that hold us back. Now, if you were to look at it that way, then you put the responsibility for growth and prosperity back under your control. And when you're able to do that, become the leader that you're supposed to be, well, now you're the hero. You're the hero. You're the enemy, and you're the hero. It's really all on you.
Do you mind running through the 8 principles or values that you hold as a company, just to give anyone an idea who maybe hasn't implemented this in their business just yet, or going through the process, indeed, what that could look like?
Yeah. The 8 principles are thus. First, positive attitude. You got to be positive. There are times where it's difficult to be positive. I know I have to come up with payroll every month too. Sometimes that could be a scary thing, a scary moment in time. And you can't ever let your team see you sweat, ever. The day you decide to become a leader, a business owner, is the same day you decide that you're never going to have a bad day, because your team will, and they need somebody to pick them up, and you are that person. So positivity is number 1. Number 2, confidence. Self-assurance is an emotional need. It's a human need that everyone has. Now, the difficulty with self-assurance is if you're not careful, it can morph into ego. And nobody wants to be around an egotistical person. Confident people, though, that's different. You want to be around those people because those people are still open to the opinion of others. They still want to learn. They still want to grow. Whereas egotistical people, they shut everyone out because they have an impression of themselves that makes them greater than others. And nobody likes it. And they don't even recognize that nobody likes it. So you got to be careful with that. So confidence, it comes with practice, it comes with preparation, and you need it. Thirdly, listening, your ability to listen. Now, the human tendency that's opposite to that is forgetting. We forget. Now, when we forget, we have to learn the same lessons over and over and over again. Whereas if we can remember, listen and remember, we will help a lot of people feel understood. Many times, especially with the age group that we work with today, they don't leave because of the money. They leave because they don't feel like they're listened to. They don't feel like they have a say in your organization. People need it. It's an emotional need. Caring. Caring is the 4th principle. And we talked about this with my son. The human tendency that is opposite to caring is indifference, apathy. We don't care. Now, the difficulty with apathy is it happens more than we think. You see, we get so focused on ourselves that we begin to let others down. That's what I did in the beginning with my son. I was letting him down. And only until I showed him that I was listening and that I cared did he open up to what I was trying to teach him, what I was trying to say. The 5th, give. And I've taught this one already. We want to give our attention before we take information. In other words, before you jump into whatever it is, you ever find yourself skipping the pleasantries with your employees so that you can make a point, okay, that's a no-no. All right? Your employee has a need, an emotional need to be understood, cared about, and reassured. You need to take care of those emotional needs as a leader. The next principle, asking. We want to ask the right question, determine the right answer, and respond accordingly. What I'm referring to here is courage. All right? We want to be courageous as we take care of our customers. Same thing with leaders and their employees. You want to be courageous. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say something happens, something tragic, right, to a customer, and now they're complaining. And let's say they're really influential in the marketplace, and they've said some bad things about you online, right? Now you can go into the office and you can scream and yell, or you can bring in a calm, and you can say it's going to be okay. Let me give you an example. I'm not perfect at this, but I'm learning. And here's what I found from a recent experience. I had a coach call me, one of my coaches who teaches call handlers. And we often do shop the competition calls, where we call their competitors in their marketplace and we see how they answer phones. Now, our objective here is for them to listen to their competitor and see how terrible they are. In most cases, they are. And then it kind of bolsters their confidence that they're learning a lot and growing a lot, and the way they answer the phones is a whole lot better. It's a really cool lesson. However, in this particular case, a coach, without realizing it, called another one of our customers.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And that customer crushed it, followed every principle to the T. And in the middle of the call, she began to recognize that she was following the pattern for excellence, the very same principles. And the CSR, or the call hunter that she was coaching, began to realize it too. And boy, did she look silly. She found out later the owner was, told of the whole situation. And he was upset that he wasn't told that we were working with one of his competitors. Oh my gosh, my competitive edge is gone. And she calls me up and she's freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, it's interesting when you live in fear instead of courage, because one will drown out the other. The two cannot exist in the same mind at the same time. Is that you come up with these lose-lose scenarios. And she came up with every lose-lose scenario under the sun. And I finally stopped her and I said, look, this is an opportunity. Opportunity number one is that you can explain that, there are other companies in the area that want to take great care of customers like you. Do you think that's going to hurt your business or help it? How are we looking at this, Mr. Owner? You know what I'm saying? Number two, you can promise them that you as a coach will not be working with them. You can say that me, Mike, obviously you like me. We've been working together for the last 2 years. Guess what? I promise you that as your coach, I will not be their coach. I will never talk to them. I am yours. And number three, offer them my book. Apologize for not telling them beforehand. We should have. Take responsibility for that action. And tell them that as an apology, we'd like to make sure everybody gets a copy of the new book coming out. There are 6 of them that we're sending out. She does that. They love it. And we're good. And all that worry and all that concern and all the lose-lose scenarios were out the door. Fear is a powerful thing.
You can focus on moving forward, right? Yeah, I've had a number of discussions about this dictatorship way of leading people, which is a very old way of doing things. And when you break it down, it actually is very fear-based, isn't it? To not take any of the opinions, to not want to run anything by anyone in your team. It's just my way or the highway, and that is entrenched in that fear element. So once you break that down, it kind of makes a lot of sense why that is now outdated and why we're putting more time into understanding people, which speaks directly to our whole conversation today, right?
You're right. Employees are intimidated by you as a leader. And I want to make sure the audience understands, which is why I'm going to repeat myself. Your employees are intimidated by you because you are the leader, because of the role you play. Now, it is your objective as the leader to bring calm to the system. Bring calm to the system. You bring that calm, you bring that positivity, you bring that opportunity mindset, and you show them that everything that comes is an opportunity. It's an opportunity. I was thanking her at the end of the call. I said, wow, what a great opportunity that you've uncovered. We're going to talk about this at our company summit coming up, and we're going to talk about how to deal with this in the future. You uncovered that. Thank you so much for that. Now, I knew she was intimidated, and I needed to get rid of that quickly so that she could learn. And I also wanted her to feel comfortable coming to me with situations. So that was my goal there. Okay, 2 last principles. Building value. We want to create unique value for every customer that calls in. If they have a problem with their AC or what have you, we want to build value specific to their need. The human tendency that stands opposite to that is that we tend to focus more on ourselves. And as a result, we feel entitled. Entitlement's a terrible thing. And for the sake of time, I'll just leave it to the book. You can learn all about it, what to do with entitlement in the book. You should get it. And then lastly is gratitude. I wonder how often we show our team how grateful we are for them. Remember that we could not be where we are, and we will not be where we want to be, growth, prosperity, without people, which is why we should do as much as possible to express that appreciation to them. You may be motivated by money. They are not just motivated by money. They're motivated by meaning. Your job is to create meaning for them. Your job is to teach them how to build relationships. As they build meaningful relationships, you'll be able to have the behaviors you need to progress in your business, to have prosperity in your business. Why? Because your individual people, those individuals, will experience progress and prosperity in their lives. So be grateful. And those are the 8 principles.
Now, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm going to start to wrap this up. And one of the questions that I often ask people is for book recommendations or their favourite pieces of literature, if you like. But in your case, I'm going to ask you where we can actually get your books from, particularly this new one, which is only a couple of days old now.
They're on Amazon.
Okay.
And just search Patterned After Excellence, Brigham Dickinson, that's me, the author, Pursuing Truth in Work and Life, and you'll find it. So yes, please buy it. And not only buy it, if you'll take a step further and provide a review, it would help tremendously. So that's where to get it, Amazon.
Now, if you could, apart from the advice of getting this book, if you could have just a couple of minutes with a young person starting off in the plumbing or trade services industry, and you had to give them 1 or 2 very quick takeaways that you think they could use to help create success for themselves, can you put that in a couple of sentences or so?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had the opportunity to address that same group of people at AC by J. And the first question I asked them is, why are you here? And they looked at me kind of funny, like, well, who the heck are you to ask me why I'm here, right? And I said, no, I really want you to sell yourself on why you are here. So the first bit of advice that I'd give new technicians in this industry is the first sell you need to make is the one you make to yourself. You need to believe in your ability. You need to believe in your capacity to take great care of customers. And number 2 is exactly what I just said. Before you fix the system, before you go to the problem at hand, fix the person, build the relationship. Because if they like you, just like that dermatologist, that old dermatologist that broke all the rules, every one of them, it'll be okay. Why? Because they like you. They like you. And not only will they like you, you're going to be more fulfilled and you're going to experience more meaning in your work. So sell yourself and take care of the customer. Fix the customer before you fix the system. And those are the 2 bits of advice I'd give them.
Sound advice. Now, if you could have one law changed or implemented, a question I do ask everybody, what would that be?
I appreciate the question. As opposed to wanting to change laws, it seems like we're going to do that till we're blue in the face. And we get lobbyists involved and politicians involved, and we do whatever we got to do to change the law. as opposed to practicing a little bit of self-restraint, as opposed to having more discipline. You know, we were talking about scooters in big cities and how those scooter riders were acting out of character and not being nice on the road and sharing the road with other walkers and cars and bikers, and how they felt like they needed to create more regulations, more rules, more laws. Where the reality is that what we need is people who follow truth, people who apply truth. You see, when you apply truth, it produces progress and prosperity. Whereas when you don't follow truth, well, that's the labor that's involved. That's the work that's involved. That's the cancer, so to speak. That's where you put the shackles on and you experience less freedom. The most free people in the world are the ones that don't worry about changing the laws. They just adhere to them. Imagine a population of people who follow truth as opposed to human tendency. Would we need policemen? Would we need laws? We wouldn't.
There's probably a good argument to say that we wouldn't. You're right, yeah. Is there anything you want to add, any parting words for my audience that you'd like to convey before we wrap this up?
Yeah, if you like this conversation, buy the book. Buy the book and also go to our website. It's just powersellingpros.com, POWERSELLINGPROS.com, and take a look at our other services. Power certification for our call handlers, our technicians, our business owners. There's a lot of services we provide. Coaching programs is our main service. Would love to come and train your team. We've been to Australia, believe it or not. We've trained teams in Australia. We do travel well. So would love to work with you and spend more time with you and your team to change the culture and help you progress and grow.
And really quickly, what type of companies come to you for your services? Companies, and I'm talking in terms of size here, but any size, right? You work across the board?
Yes, we do work across the board. We mostly work with companies that do about 2 million or more, but we have worked with companies that are a bit smaller in certain situations, and as well as companies that are much, much larger. We have companies that do 100 million or more in annual revenues. So, yeah.
And strangely enough, the principles stay the same.
That's right. For all of us. We teach people to do what we are doing.
Well, Brigham, I'm going to be, as I said, respectful of your time, and I want to thank you so much for carving out a little bit of your day to do this. And I know that you're on a hectic schedule at the moment as you do promote and share the value in the book. So thank you for your time. Yeah, I think that you certainly come across as a person who definitely cares and has a big heart, and that's probably something that we do need a lot more of in this industry as we do change and become more professional and really lift our standards. And at the end of the day, as we said before we started recording here, the way that we look after our customer, because we can forget from time to time that they are the people that actually do pay us at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So we probably should put a lot of focus on serving their needs and meeting their expectations. So thank you for all that you do for the industry, and I certainly hope this is not the last time that we are going to have a nice conversation. I wish you luck with the book, and thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey everybody, it's Matt again. Thanks for listening. Just a couple of things before you guys clock off. You can get all Trench Talk episodes at xrm.com.au/podcast. You can also sign up for other goodies at the same site. Just plonk your email in there and you are covered. That's X for X-ray, R for Romeo, M for Mike.com.au/podcast. If you really like what I'm bringing you, please head to iTunes, subscribe to this show, and leave a review right there. And lastly, if you want to contact me directly, type the @ symbol followed by Mr. Matt Reynolds into your search bar and you'll find all the social links. Goodbye.